The report says several Irish Catholic religious orders covered up 6 decades of brutality and molestation of boys and girls assigned to their care in special cares, reformatories and orphanages. It says Catholic priests and nuns terrorised thousands of children in workhouse-style schools, and the government did little to stop the chronic beatings, rapes and other abuse. So clearly a damning report there. Well, to discuss this with me more is Colm O'Gorman. He was abused from the age of 14 to 16 by a priest and has written a book about his experience, Beyond Belief. Colm, thanks very much for being with us. We'll talk a little bit about your experiences in a moment, but first of all, you've had sight of some of this report. Give us a sense of what can be found there. It really is shocking. It's
a very, very lengthy report. It runs to about 5 volumes and it's just gone live online, so I've had a quick scan of it. I mean, what the report has found is a regime of physical and emotional abuse that was delivered in a severe and regimented manner. It describes what it saw as a response to a 19th century response to a social problem that was never updated. It found that physical abuse was severe and systemic across all homes, that in boys' home in particular, ritualized beatings were the norm, and that physical abuse was a means of communication with children. It was the norm. And that it wasn't the act of individuals, as it was too widespread, that it was the response of a system to children who were placed in their care. It found that sexual abuse was chronic, particularly across boys' homes. You were abused by your parish priest, and it's something that you have taken what is a very bold step to speak out about. Presumably a lot of those people, and we were hearing earlier from our correspondent, moved away from Ireland and couldn't bear to be in their home country anymore, and are still living with secrets, presumably, and things that have changed the course of their life. About 30,000 people went through these institutions over the period dealt with within this report. About 2,500 individual complaints were received by the Commission. So without a doubt there are many, many thousands of adults who haven't survived, who are no longer with us, who will have died as a consequence of how they were treated. There's no doubt about that.
Spokane Catholic Diocese is emerging from its sex abuse crisis.
In the past 4 years, more than 180 people have come forward claiming they were sexually abused by priests in this area over the past 60 years. 66, more than 1/3, reported they were molested by former priest Patrick O'Donnell. Tonight, for the first time, he confesses to his sins and offers an apology to everyone.
KXLY4's Eric Loney has followed this story for a number of years. He joins us now with this exclusive video.
Yeah, Patrick O'Donnell has been able to avoid reporters' questions for more than 20 years now, and including ours. We went to his house in Western Washington last month, but he didn't answer his door. KXLY4 has obtained more than 9 hours of videotaped depositions where O'Donnell frankly and unemotionally admits what he's done. We want to warn you, this story is not graphic, but it could be upsetting to some people.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. In a series of videotaped depositions, Patrick O'Donnell admits he preyed on young boys while serving as a priest in the Spokane Catholic Diocese.
Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez. So glad that you are here with us. These are the documents that I'm going to be taking you through here in 1 minute. Pardon me for the shadows. Eddie Lavandera is going to be joining me in just a little bit. He's standing by over here as well. So let's get to it. The story that I'm about to tell you about is shocking many Americans tonight, many church-going Americans. This is a story about a preacher with a following of 25,000 people. He drives a Bentley. He flies around, travels all over the world in private planes. He's appeared on this network and others, speaking out against homosexuality. Guess what? Tonight, this so-called man of God is being sued by 2 young men. They say that he coerced them into sexual relationships.
Well, I don't believe in the gay lifestyle, and I believe it's not God's way.
He doesn't believe in the gay lifestyle, and he doesn't believe it's God's way. Direct quote. Keep in mind, this is the man accused of now having sex with teenage boys, members of his church, known as his spiritual sons throughout the congregation. Their lawsuit alleges that he convinced them to do those things by giving them cash and extravagant gifts throughout. It's all right there in the documents.
Jamal Paris filed another lawsuit against Long, and here's what he told Atlanta TV station WAGS.
I cannot get the sound of his voice out of my head, and I cannot forget the smell of his cologne, and I cannot forget the way that he made me cry many nights when I drove in his cars on the way home. not able to take enough showers to wipe the smell of him off of my body.
Photos were released of Bishop Long dressed in tight, revealing spandex workout clothing, apparently taking his own picture with a camera phone. Pictures Long sent to one of the plaintiffs, according to his lawyer. But Long's attorney said the pictures were not relevant to the case. With speculation swirling whether he would step down, Bishop Long took to the pulpit.
This thing, I'm going to fight. And I want you to know one other thing. I feel like David against Goliath. But I got 5 rocks.
But remember when he told the congregation, I will fight this, justice?
Yep, he did it with passion. He said, I'm going to get out there, I'm going to have my day in court. But then he turns around and settles.
One day after the Los Angeles Archdiocese settled a $660 million sex abuse lawsuit, some of the victims are beginning to speak out about the molestation they endured.
And a Valley resident who was one of the first people to file a sex abuse lawsuit against the Catholic Church is finally telling his personal story. KMR6 reporter Tanya McRae has this exclusive interview.
David Price looks like a typical teenager, but what you don't see behind his boyish grin is a horrible secret he was keeping to himself.
I was a student at Mater Dei High School in Santa Ana, and the principal, Father Michael Harris, molested me those 4 years.
From 1979 to 1983, David was sexually molested by the school principal, Monsignor Michael Harris. David was so ashamed he repressed what had happened to him for years. But when he was 29 years old, the horrific nightmares about the abuse finally sent him to the Orange Archdiocese.
First I went to the diocese, literally just looking for an apology, tell them what had happened to me, and believed that they would look at me and say, we're so sorry, what can we do for you? And instead they chose to deny it.
David filed a lawsuit against the charismatic man nicknamed Father Hollywood. After 11 days of grueling and humiliating depositions, the judge ruled that David's case was beyond the statute of limitations.
How many gay men are serving in the Vatican? These images were captured by a hidden camera, and if they depict what one man alleges, it would mean major embarrassment for the Vatican. The tape was shot secretly by a young man who alleges Monsignor Tommaso Stanico, a high-ranking Vatican official, propositioned him at this meeting after they communicated in a gay internet chat room. It was shown on an Italian TV station. And the meeting took place right under the Pope's nose.
They arranged to meet in St. Peter's Square in the very shadow of the Pope's apartment, went up to the Monsignor's office, in where he apparently believed that there would be a sexual encounter.
And there is talk of sex on the tape. Stanico can be heard telling the young man he doesn't believe homosexuality is a sin, and that he knows many gay priests, some in the Vatican.
In 2008, a gathering took place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The purpose of this gathering was to talk about intergenerational trauma. The pain and hurt at this conference was so intense that the elders instructed us to make a 7,000-mile journey across the United States. We traveled to current and former boarding schools to gather these stories from the people who attended when they were children. We recorded the stories of what happened to them. Here are their stories.
I remember me and my friend, another girl, well, she was my relative from Cheyenne River. We were in the dormitory and we went out the back door, and it was the roof, and we didn't realize it was the roof, but we went back in, and that night we had, they called our names. They called a whole bunch of little girls' names, and so we all got in line, and the sister opened this door, and she took one little girl in there, and pretty soon that little girl was just crying, and she came out, and then the next one, and we realized they were getting whipped in there. And when it was my turn to go up there, and I went in there, and that sister told me that I was on the roof and I was somewhere I weren't supposed to be, and so they pulled our pants down, and that was our first whipping. The first day I got there, the first night, that was my experience with the first day at boarding school.
I'm the last of the family of 9 children. My oldest son went to boarding school, never came back. Only his body was brought her. And I have two other sisters, later years, lost their lives to alcoholism.
And yes, there was sexual abuse in our time. Yes, there was. But we weren't allowed to talk about it. We were given cod liver oil by the tablespoonful for talking Indian. We were slapped with yardsticks for talking Indian, for whispering, or wanting to go to church. We couldn't have a best friend. They'd break us apart. Like someone said, they got separated because they were too close. And that's the way it was.